Luke 15, verses, I believe, 11 through 32. That's on page 1624 in your pew Bibles. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth in wild living. After he has spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you killed the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything that I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" This is word of the Lord. Just so you know, the Lord willing, the plan is to come back to this text and look at the text once again through the lens of the older brother. But for today, we're gonna focus on the younger brother. And let me start by asking you a question. Have you ever been in an argument where you were thinking that this argument was about one thing, but it turns out it was about something completely different? Men often find themselves in such arguments against their girlfriends and wives. Of course, I don't know anything about that because I've never been in a situation like that. I've only been told. Let me give you an example. You and your spouse argue about the lawn not being mowed. Being the classic problem solver that you are, you assess the situation. Okay, the grass is a little bit too long. All we need to do is mow it, and I will do it on Saturday, right? You announce this perfectly logical solution to the problem. But when you announce it, the argument doesn't end. It actually escalates till you hear a response so devastating that it leaves you speechless. Your spouse or your girlfriend says to you, "You don't get it. You won't get it. You don't want to get it." Now you're completely baffled because in your mind, you have done everything correctly. You assessed the situation. You found a solution. You told your girlfriend, spouse, that you're going to fix the problem. So why are you still arguing? Well, you're arguing because you misunderstood the nature of the problem. The argument was never about the task of mowing the lawn. It was more relational, right? It was about this deep-seated feeling of being underappreciated, unheard, and unsupported. The unmowed lawn was merely the symptom. The deeper issue here was this fractured relationship. And such a fundamental misunderstanding is central to our story this morning. Luke 15 begins by telling us that the tax collectors and sinners, the lost causes of society, were gathering around Jesus to hear him. Seeing this, the Pharisees and the experts of the law complained. They said, "This man," meaning Jesus, "welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus responds by telling three stories: the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, which all deliver the same unified answer to their complaint. And in doing so, Jesus reveals the very heart of his mission and his gospel. And our text is the third and the final story, the longest by a huge margin. Here, Jesus paints his most vivid picture of what it means to be lost. And we see that at its core, this lostness is caused by the same type of misunderstanding that we just talked about. The mistake of treating a relational problem like it's a transactional problem. Our text begins when the younger son approaches the father with a request. "Father, give me my share of the inheritance. Give me my share of your property." And from his first words, we begin to see his worldview. And I would summarize his worldview in these two main points. Independence. First, independence, that he is his own being. And second, in order for him to achieve this independence, he needs wealth. The best way to achieve his independence is through his wealth. In other words, the younger son here is out to chart his own destiny. And in order for him to do that, he needs seed money. Luke tells us in verse 13 that once the son gets his share, he liquidates it as fast as he can and sets off for a distant country. We might see the younger son here as impetuous, sure, but also he's ambitious. He seems ambitious. If we could just set aside what we know already about the story, to our Western ears, this request doesn't seem all that scandalous. Today, we might even commend this request as coming out of his father's shadow, as a noble step toward becoming his own person. But to Jesus' original audience, this was an unthinkable insult. As Kenneth Bailey explains, in that first century Jewish culture, inheritance was something that you received only after your father had passed away. For a son to demand such a inheritance while his father was still alive was to essentially to look the father right in the eyes and tell him, "You're worth more to me dead than alive." Let that sink in for a bit. You're worth more to me dead than alive. That was the message